Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're here, I hope you decide to stay for a little while. Today's video is going to be quite the chatty one because there's quite a few thoughts I have, but I will have some footage of me just drawing in the background to watch while you guys listen. Today's topic is using references for your art, and I am an avid reference user myself, and almost every completed drawing or illustration I've done has had one or multiple references used in it. And I don't think that I would have improved the way that I have, or people would like my art in the way that they do, without using some sort of reference. First off, I want to note that when I do refer to references, I am actually just referring to photos, people's art in real life. Not really just a photograph, but actually just the act of referencing something. Generally, it would probably be a photo or art, but learning to take or steal from everyone else and everything is kind of what allowed me to level up my own art. My first point I want to talk about is how your eye becomes better trained to see mistakes when drawing by using references. And when I mean by using references, I mean by actively studying the photo, the picture, whatever you're using, and determining why it looks the way it does. Because when you draw normally, you kind of just use what's in your brain, you do what you think looks right. But when you use a reference, you have a detailed version of something to study. So usually when you just draw a face, or at least when I draw a face, I just use the ratio of what I think, how big the face is, the shape of the eyes that I've done before, yada yada. But when you have a reference, you can really analyze exactly, okay, well, this is how long the face is, and this is why the cheekbones look like this, and this is why the eye has this crease, and etc. etc. You pretty much have the cheat sheet right in front of you, and why wouldn't you use it to help improve your art? When you use references, more of those images are stored in your visual library. So then when you go and draw something again, you have something that you can fall back on and rely on to be able to help you determine whether or not it will look good, because you've drawn it before, and so you know what looks good because you used a reference. When you're exposed to art that is better than yours, or you pay closer attention to what makes your art look wonky in comparison to others, it trains your kind of eye to catch the differences. Have you ever looked at your old art and been like, ew, I can't believe I used to draw like this? You now are noticing all the small mistakes you did when before you might have been super proud of that drawing. This is all because you've exposed yourself to more references or good art. It has essentially leveled up your brain's ability to see what you like and don't like. It's like when you get a new prescription. Before you got your new glasses, you thought you could see fine, and then you do try them on and you're like, damn, everything's way more clear now. Your art skills and your ability to see good art or see your mistakes aren't linear. A lot of people think that if you get better at drawing or your technical skill gets better, that you just become a better artist. But I find it is a balance between your technical skill and your brain's ability to see and perceive good art. There is a channel on YouTube called Sykra, and he did a really great video about artistic growth and how a lot of people get discouraged during these down periods of when your technical skill doesn't necessarily meet your visual or your brain's ability to see your skill. It was done like 8 years ago, but I still think it's relevant today, and it's such a good video. And here is a graph that kind of explains why that you may actually be improving, but you just can't see it. Usually what happens is that your skill will increase, but your ability to see your skill or perceive good art will stay the same. But you feel good because you can physically see that your art is getting better. But then after a while, your technical skill will stagnate, but your ability to perceive and find the mistakes in art will increase. And thus, it starts to feel really bad because you can see that your art has improved, but you know you could do better, but you don't have the skills to do it. And it's all about this balance, and no matter what skill level you are as an artist, you're always going to have this kind of dilemma. There's going to be some times where your skill is going to increase and you're going to feel really good, and then you're going to have the dilemma of when your ability to see good art will increase and not have the ability to match. And this is why I think it is really important to use references, because it will both improve your technical skill but also your ability to perceive good art and good proportions and just whatever you're trying to improve on. My second point is this weird debate of people who are being able to draw without references are automatically better than you. And there's a stigma that not using a reference makes you a better artist, but I think it's completely untrue. Most of the time when we see an amazing artist post a beautiful piece of art, whether it be having super accurate proportions or the colors are just so true to life, or just they're insanely skilled, we tend to compare ourselves to them without thinking of the process that they used to get there. Most professional artists use heavy referencing when they're creating their art, and usually they're using a multitude of references to achieve the art that they create. The trick is that they use the best parts or only the parts that they need in their references. Say they use a photo of a face to get the proportions or the pose, but then they use another photo for the lighting, and then they use another one for the color palette, etc., etc. Here are some of my own pieces that I've used multiple references on while still maintaining my own personal style, but I don't think they would look the way they do unless I had used a reference with them. For the most part, I'll use a reference for the face to get the proportions down, but I might change the hair color or I might change the hairstyle, and then I'll use another photo for the lighting and the mood that's different from the original one I chose. And even after all of this, I might even just use one single reference photo. It really all depends on this type of vibe and the style you're going for, and you should never really be ashamed for using reference. Even after all this though, there are artists that are just insanely talented and they don't need a reference to create these amazing pieces, but that is due to the fact that they've already developed the muscle memory and visual library by looking at other people's art and references to be able to do this. Once you do get to the point of not needing references or needing to rely on them as much, you can really start to push the boundaries of your own art, because you begin to just draw what is directly in your head instead of having to search for a specific reference, which many times I've given up on just trying to draw that day because I couldn't even find the one that I wanted to. But one thing I do want to try to remember is that you kind of need to just keep drawing and keep consuming art and references to even get to the point of not needing them anymore. And these are professionals. They don't have this weird shame of relying on references, and there shouldn't be any shame. Actually, it's encouraged in a lot of these super hyper realistic photos you see of these landscapes or these concept artists. They do paint it, of course, but a lot of the time they use references inside the actual drawings themselves to make it look like it's realistic. It's just unrealistic to expect someone to be able to do that all from memory or just from their imagination. And it's like this weird standard that some other artists put on each other. It's this weird standard that some people have that can be really unmotivating and hinder your artistic growth if you really start believing like that. Because how are you expected to improve and know what's wrong if you were never exposed to what is right or good in the first place? And the last thing I want to talk about is the fine line between using something as a reference and stealing. So in the art community, there's a little bit of a debate whether or not using a reference is considered stealing or copying, because you are technically relying on someone else's either art or work to use in your own. But as long as you're not blatantly stealing or copying someone else's work or using it as reference when they've stated publicly that they don't want you to, then I don't see why you can't get inspiration and use photographs, art, and everything as reference in your own. Because most things nowadays, when it comes to music, art, everything has a derivative of something. it's really hard in today's day in society to come up with completely original concepts that hasn't been done before. Of course, I'm not saying that you should just do what everyone else is doing and not think of your own unique concepts, but it's inevitable, and you're going to be running into scenarios where what you draw, what you create is going to have similarities to something else. You may see pieces of art that look like yours too. It's not always about copying someone else. You might come into contact with people who take inspiration with your own art. And that's just part of being an artist. We're constantly inspired by other artists and other forms of media and creative outlets. The main thing is, do not take credit for things that you did not come up with. So if you are clearly and visibly inspired by another artist or something else, then admit that you were inspired. It always feels really bad to be an artist and create something that seems unique to yourself, and you see someone else do the same thing without giving the proper credit where it's due. And I guess lastly is, use the reference and not let the reference use you. You want to use a reference in a way to elevate your own art, because once you become chained to the limitations of your reference, then you end up stunting your own creative growth. Remember, it's a tool, not a solution. And other than that, I want to thank you guys for watching this video. And if you like this type of content and you want to see more, then please hit a like down below and even subscribe. I do want to be a lot more consistent in uploading more videos, and I have a lot of ideas that I want to get out and a lot of topics that I want to talk about. And so if that seems like something you'd be down for, then I hope you guys can come along for this journey.